For 50 years, Bing Crosby and Bob Hope looked like best friends on screen. They made 7 road movies together and earned millions. But behind the cameras was a different story. When Hope was honored at the Friars Club, every Hollywood star showed up except one. Crosby was asked why he didn't come. His answer was brutal and cold. That moment revealed the truth about their relationship. What really happened between these two legends stayed hidden for decades. The real reason Crosby couldn't stand Hope had nothing to do with money or fame. Bing. Crosby was born on May 3, 1903, in a small house his father had built with his own hands at 1112 North J Street in Tacoma, Washington. They named him Harry Lilies Crosby Jr., but no one filed the paperwork. The doctor forgot to register the birth. That one missing form would later cause decades of confusion, as Hollywood couldn't quite decide how old Bing Crosby really was. At home, things weren't easy. His father, Harry Lowe Crosby, worked as a brewery bookkeeper and made just enough to feed their large Irish Catholic family. With 7 children packed into that little house, there was barely space to breathe. When political shifts cost Harry Sr. his job as county treasurer in 1905, they were forced to move again, scraping together what little they had. In 1915, when Kate's father passed away, he left behind 14 grandchildren and almost no financial help. The family somehow bought a house for $850, but even that was a heavy burden. Harry Sr. had to take whatever brewery work he could find to keep them afloat. His mother, Catherine Helen Harrigan, everyone called her Kate, was born in Stillwater, Minnesota on February 7, 1873, and carried music in her bones. Their 4-bedroom house was always overflowing, not just with kids, but with sound. She gathered all 7 children around a worn piano and taught them folk songs, filling the cramped rooms with harmony. Bing shared his bedroom with 3 brothers, Larry, Everett, and Ted, where noise and chaos were part of daily life. They couldn't afford many records, so Bing would play the same ones over and over again, whistling along with Edison phonograph tunes and trying to copy Al Jolson's voice. Kate also worked at a dry goods store, just to bring in extra income. She juggled shifts and children while holding the entire house together with music and faith. In 1906, the family left Tacoma and moved to Spokane when Bing was only 3. They rented a house at 303 East Pinto Avenue before finally building their own home at 508 East Sharp Avenue with the help of Harry Sr.'s brothers. Even with 2 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms, it still wasn't enough for a family of 9. Harry Sr. found bookkeeping work again, this time with Inland Brewery and Malting Company, but money was still tight. Bing attended Webster Elementary School, though he often skipped class. One day, he and his friends were caught stealing cinnamon buns and throwing them at cars. At just 8 years old, he spent a night in juvenile detention. That brush with trouble didn't scare him straight, but it gave him a story he would never forget. Sundays were spent serving as an altar boy at St. Aloysius Church, where Catholic discipline was strict and unforgiving. At home, life was loud. At church, it was silent. The contrast shaped him. He graduated from Gonzaga High School in 1920. In school, he joined elocution contests, recited Robert's service poems, and debated like a natural performer. To pay for jazz records, he worked every job he could find, delivering newspapers for the Spokesman Review, picking apples, working logging camps, cleaning brewery offices, and folding props at the Spokane Auditorium. He started working there in 1917, at age 14, and it changed everything. That was where he first saw Al Jolson perform live. Bing called it electric. He also played baseball for the Spokane Ideal Laundry team, not for glory, but for extra cash. In 1951, while attending Gonzaga University, he joined a group called the Music. They played local dances and parties. And suddenly, Bing wasn't just a kid from a crowded house anymore, he was a voice people listened to. But underneath the music, there was something else. A family myth passed down like gospel claimed they were descended from Thomas Prince and Patience Brewster of the Mayflower. His brother Larry even traced them back to a Yorkshire constable from 1204 named Geoffrey Drosett. They talked about aristocracy, but they lived in poverty. Bing later admitted the gap between who they said they were and how they actually lived gave him an inferiority complex that never went away. He didn't even have a birth certificate. Church records would be the only proof he existed. That confusion over identity made him hungry for more, for better, for applause. He was supposed to become a lawyer. But by 1925, in his final year at Gonzaga, Bing dropped out. His grades had slipped from B's to F's. The musicalators were paying him more than his part-time law clerk job ever could. He was sneaking out at night to jazz clubs like the Pekin Calf. Soaking in the sound of McKinney's Cotton Pickers and the original Dixieland Jazz Band, he was leading a double life mass on Sunday mornings, speakeasies on Saturday nights. His mother was devastated. Family friends begged him to go back. He didn't. In 1923, Bing, Al Rinker, and Al's sister, Mildred Bailey, formed a small act called Two Boys and a Girl. They played for $75 a week at the Pekin Calf, more than enough for Bing to quit law for good. His nickname came from a comic strip called the Bingville Bugle. A neighbor called him Bingo from Bingville, and it just stuck. They performed at Doc Cleamer's Theater, slipping jazz and scat into their act, which scandalized local audiences. Spokane wasn't ready for Catholic kids mixing black music into white shows, but they kept playing anyway. Then, in October 1925, Bing and Al packed up a beat-up 1916 Model T Ford and drove 1,200 miles to Los Angeles. It took them 3.5 weeks. They averaged 200 miles a day, sleeping in one hotel room to save money, sneaking the second person in after dark. When they got to Hollywood, they crashed on floors and sang on sidewalks for coins. Bing worked as a soda jerk when he wasn't auditioning. On his first night in Hollywood, he got spectacularly drunk at Jane Jones's speakeasy in the hills. He would never forget the rubber legs. That week, they stayed with Mildred Bailey, got harassed in Tijuana, and took a terrifying $3 airplane ride that gave Bing a lifelong fear of heights. For the rest of his career, he always asked for hotel rooms on the lower floors. In 1926, things got worse. One talent scout said he looked too Irish and that his voice sounded like a cat in heat. No studios wanted him. Casting directors spent over $70,000 testing him, but no one signed him. His ears stuck out. His voice was too soft. He drank even more. His brothers sold trucks on the side, sometimes used for bootlegging, and that money helped him survive. Meanwhile, electrical recording was changing everything in the music world. Soft voices like Bing's suddenly worked, but he didn't know that yet. Later that year, Bing and Al landed a gig with Fantune and Marco's Vaudeville Revue. It paid $75 a week each. They performed 4 shows a day, 5 on weekends, but not everyone liked it. Their use of black music styles like scat and barrelhouse jazz upset white audiences. Theater managers got complaints. Some venues even asked them to tone it down. Their songs, China Boy, Copenhagen, and San, were bold. They performed with dancers Doreen Wilde and Bobby Thompson. And that interracial collaboration stirred even more controversy, but it also got them noticed. In late October 1926, Paul Whiteman's orchestra caught their act in Los Angeles. Whiteman didn't fire them, even when theater managers said to. Instead, he added pianist Harry Barris and turned the duo into a trio, the Rhythm Boys. Their 1927 hit, Mississippi Mud, changed everything. Recorded with cornet legend Bix Beiderbecke, it made Whiteman the king of jazz. Bing, Barris, and Rinker suddenly had a sound that everyone wanted. They recorded I've Got the Girl and toured with Whiteman across the country. In January 1927, they performed at the Paramount Theater in New York. Bing was now earning $200 a week and singing for millions on radio. Songs like From Monday On and What Price lyrics became bestsellers. But fame didn't erase the darkness. Bing drank too much. During the filming of King of Jazz, after an argument, he drove a woman home and crashed into another car. Both were thrown over the windshield. She was bloody and unconscious. He was arrested and locked up in Lincoln Heights Jail. Whiteman pulled strings to get him out. The next day, Bing showed up at the studio in handcuffs. Because of that arrest, he lost his solo number in King of Jazz. Song of the Dawn went to someone else. He still appeared in group songs like Happy Feet, but it wasn't the same. The movie cost nearly $2 million, but only made back $900,000. It was released just after the stock market crash and flopped hard. Whiteman had to fire 10 band members and cut salaries by 15%. But Bing kept going. He remembered Whiteman's 1924 concert at Aeolian Hall where George Gershwin debuted, Rhapsody in Blue. It was meant to prove that jazz could be serious music. That concert gave Whiteman the crown, but it made Bing feel like an outsider. Gershwin's genius overwhelmed him. He wasn't part of that world yet, but he knew he would be. And by 1930, he would leave the Rhythm Boys behind to become something bigger. He would become Bing Crosby. By then, the friendship was over, at least behind the scenes. When interviews brought up Bing's name, Hope would smile politely, deliver a practiced line, and quickly move on. He never spoke about the Friars Club night again, though everyone around him knew it had left a mark. For decades, they kept up the illusion of camaraderie for the camera's Christmas specials, golf tournaments, talk show appearances, but the warmth had faded. Crosby, ever the businessman, had learned early that emotions didn't pay. Appearances did. Their relationship became one of convenience, a partnership built on nostalgia and mutual benefit. Studios loved to pair them because audiences still believed in the myth, the easy banter, the fake rivalry, the playful insults. But off camera, they barely spoke. When Crosby moved to Europe later in life, Hope didn't visit. When Hope hosted his famous Christmas specials, Crosby sometimes appeared only through pre-recorded segments. In 1977, Bing Crosby collapsed and died on a golf course in Spain. His last words, according to witnesses, were, "That was a great game of golf, fellas." He was 74. Bob Hope was devastated, though he didn't show it publicly. He told reporters, "Bing was one of the all-time greats. I'll miss him," but privately, he was quiet for days. Friends said it was the first time in years they'd seen him so subdued. After Crosby's death, Hope spoke about their partnership less and less. When asked if he missed working with Bing, he simply said, "We had a good run." But those who knew both men said it wasn't that simple. Hope had spent half a century trying to match Crosby's effortless charm, the cool, detached crooner who never seemed to try, while Hope had to work endlessly to stay funny. The rivalry had pushed them both to greatness, but it had also kept them apart. Dorothy Lamour once said they were like brothers who loved each other but couldn't stand to admit it. And maybe she was right. Their chemistry came from that tension, admiration mixed with jealousy, friendship mixed with competition. The audience saw two men who made each other better. What they didn't see were the bruises beneath the laughter. In the years that followed, Bob Hope continued to perform, living long enough to see himself become a symbol of an older, gentler Hollywood. When asked near the end of his life about Bing, his voice softened. He was the best, Hope said quietly. Nobody could touch him. The truth was, neither of them ever really found another partnership like it. The Road pictures had defined a generation of comedy, and together they had set the standard for cinematic duos. But beneath the music and the laughter, the real road between Bing Crosby and Bob Hope was far from smooth. It was long, winding, and filled with unspoken words, the kind of road that leads not to friendship or fame, but to silence. In the years after Bing Crosby's death, Bob Hope kept the legend alive on screen, but behind the curtain, he carried a quiet guilt. He often told friends that if he'd known Bing was going to die so suddenly, he would have called him one last time. But that call never came. They hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. The last time they saw each other in person was at a charity golf event in 1975. They smiled for the cameras, traded jokes about each other's golf swings, and went their separate ways. No harsh words, no goodbyes, just the kind of polite distance that grows when pride stands in the way of friendship. In interviews during the 1980s, Hope would still refer to Crosby as my partner, as if saying it could rewrite history. He even kept a framed photo of them from Road to Morocco in his study. Visitors said that sometimes, when Hope was sitting alone, he'd glance at it and smile. Not the showman's grin, but something smaller, sadder. The truth was, Bob Hope had built a career on always having the last word. But when it came to Bing, the silence said it all. Hollywood never saw another duo like them. Their rhythm, their timing, their easy chemistry. It was lightning in a bottle. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis came close, but even they admitted Bing and Bob had done it first. Every wisecrack and wink in their road films hid something deeper. The push and pull between two men who could never fully trust each other, yet couldn't succeed without the other either. After Bing's passing, old recordings of their radio shows began resurfacing. Fans heard the teasing, the laughter, the effortless banter, and it felt timeless. But if you listened closely, you could sometimes hear the tension too. Bing's cool restraint, Hope's nervous energy, both men fighting for control of the moment. It was that contrast that made them magic, and that same contrast that destroyed whatever real friendship they might have had. When Bob Hope turned 100 in 2003, journalists asked him what he remembered most about his life. He was frail but sharp, still quick with a line. The laughs, he said, all the laughs. Then he paused, almost whispering. And Bing, it was the first and last time he ever spoke of him without a joke. In the end, the story of Bing Crosby and Bob Hope isn't about betrayal or rivalry. It's about two men who defined an era and gave millions of people a reason to smile. Even when they couldn't quite do the same for each other, they were partners in laughter, divided by ego but united by legacy. And even now, when old clips play on late-night television, you can still feel it. The spark, the tension, the brilliance. Two legends forever, side by side, walking the road to anywhere, still making the world believe they were the best of friends. In the years that followed, the world moved on. New stars rose. New kinds of comedy took over, but the bond between Bing Crosby and Bob Hope remained frozen in time. To younger generations, they were relics of a gentler Hollywood. Symbols of an era when laughter was simple and sincerity still sold tickets. Yet, for those who had known them personally, their story carried a quiet sadness. In 2003, when Bob Hope passed away, just 2 months after his 100th birthday, the media called it the end of the golden age of entertainment. But among the tributes and headlines, one photograph kept reappearing. Bing and Bob standing side by side, grinning beneath the desert sun during the filming of Road to Morocco. Their faces were young, carefree, and alive with the joy of making people laugh. It was a reminder of what they'd built together, not just films, but a legacy. At Hope's funeral, a recording of Thanks for the Memory played softly, as friends and family said their goodbyes. The song, his signature tune, carried more meaning that day than ever before. Its lyrics, about looking back with gratitude on a lifetime of shared moments, seemed to echo what Bob could never quite say to Bing in person. Thanks for the memory. Indeed, historians still debate what truly happened between them, whether it was rivalry, pride, or simple misunderstanding that drove them apart. But everyone agrees on one thing: they were two of a kind. Both men understood the delicate dance of fame, how it could elevate you, but also isolate you. Both had learned that behind every laugh, there's often a little heartbreak. In Hollywood's archives, reels of the road to Zanzibar, the road to Bali, and the road to Utopia still flicker to life. Their jokes landing as fresh as they did 70 years ago. When you watch them today, you can still see it, that spark, that unspoken connection that made audiences believe in their friendship, even when the truth was more complicated. Maybe that's what makes their story timeless. It's not just about fame or success, it's about the fragility of human connection, about how pride can build walls, and how regret can linger long after the spotlight fades. In the end, Bing Crosby and Bob Hope didn't need to make peace to leave their mark. Their legacy was their reconciliation. Every laugh, every song, every perfectly timed look into the camera. They showed the world that even imperfect relationships can create something beautiful. And maybe that's why, decades later, people still return to those old films, not just to laugh, but to remember. To remember two men who spent a lifetime chasing applause and finally found their immortality not in friendship, but in the laughter they left behind.